Chapter 17. No sucker mom here. Everything grows. If I had learned anything from the gardening lessons with my grandmother, that one truth stood above the rest. Every step is important in the care and nurturing of what we hope to see grow and thrive. Preparing the soil, adding nutrients, planting seeds, providing the proper amounts of water and sunlight, and of course, understanding how growth depends on weathering the changing seasons. Not only do roses and strawberries and trees grow, but so do the pesky bugs and weeds if you don't stay on top of them. The simple but lasting lesson was, when in doubt, focus on protecting the flowers. In life, that meant the people and the relationships I treasured most. In doing my utmost to see loved ones grow and thrive, I still had to ward off negative influences. Obviously, when you see the first signs of trouble in your garden, you can save yourself much heartache by nipping the threat in the proverbial bud. These gardening principles may help to explain why I raised my kids as I did, how I tried to cultivate an open, realistic line of communication in my marriage, and how I tried to honor my own growth as the seeker I am. Some of my choices were unconventional, quite like my own upbringing, maybe even controversial. In the early days, the judgment I faced for how I appeared to be breaking away from the collective was not surprising. Eventually, I would have to learn how to not be defensive and to understand that I couldn't let others' scrutiny and judgment direct my life. Besides, it was my life. No one had to fear that my going against the grain was contagious, as if it could make them swallow their values or change their lifestyle. Yet many reacted as if I could. I rarely felt the need to please or placate the chatters or to refute every ridiculous rumor that popped up. Later on, when controversies got out of hand and folks believed Will and I were swingers, or that we were both gay and playing as each other's beards, or that we were sleeping with whomever we chose, whenever we chose to, all I could do was sit back and shake my head. It got so ridiculous. One traditional aspect of our marriage is that we put family first, and for a few reasons, we were both adamantly against divorce. Children of divorce ourselves, we understood the challenges to the family unit that almost inevitably arise when marriages are severed. We both believed in the vows of, for better, for worse. You can sprinkle some abandonment issues in there for both of us as well. We also had some issues that were traditional. In archetypal male fashion, Will was on his hero's journey, trying to be the superhero, off conquering and charging for the flag at the top of the hill with fierce determination. In archetypal female fashion, I prioritized my roles as mother and wife, keeper of hearth and home. This didn't stop me from trying to be a superheroine in a multifaceted career, like so many of us trying to do all and be all. My biggest issue was also fairly common: fear of abandonment. This fear fed through our too busy lives, a constant, and there was always so much going on, with the running themes of me being overwhelmed and him being emotionally unavailable, that I found myself in a chronic state of discontent. After a therapy session one afternoon, Will and I had a conversation about this apparent disconnect in our priorities. It was a telling moment, just him and me sitting across from each other at a table in our library, a room full of books that we love and collect. With some frustration, I tried a new way to get him to understand my point of view. He listened as I asked, if we didn't have this house, our careers, and all the things, and it was just the two of us on a deserted island together, what would we have? What would we have between us, just you and I? Will paused and thought about the question, but didn't answer right away. I continued. We need to work on our connection. We need to strengthen the love and connection between us. Will immediately responded, "We'll get to that later." Classic. This was a reasonable response for someone who grew up without stable financial security and who formed the idea that material gain was the key to safety in this world. For high achievers, that then becomes the utmost priority and a display of love. His way to show his love was by making sure I wanted for nothing. Although I was grateful for his ability to provide all of that. With my history, my utmost priority and key to safety in the world was from feeling he loved me above all else and having all of his attention. Maturity and time would prove us both wrong. We said little more that was memorable that afternoon. Then we both got up from the table, still with our difference in beliefs as to what would make for a strong union, and went about our day. As I mentally replayed the conversation later, his assurance that we would get to us in the future seemed to suggest that someday his days of empire building would be behind us, and then we could slow down and connect more. None of this was helpful to me, considering that A, our love and connection could be put on the back burner while he pursued and lived out his dream, and B, as he pursued his dream, he would be working with and in the company of some of the most sought-after women in the world. I was not so naive as to believe that all of a sudden, Will would be temptation-resistant in what was going to be an onslaught of opportunity. Good luck to anyone in their late 20s, early 30s who has that down pat. Some significant others might expect an incredible amount of willpower, no pun intended, in service of the ideals of matrimony. If that works for you, many blessings. But in my case, I wanted to be aligned with that which I deemed inevitable. This was less about will, but rather about my own experience with the nature of temptation. I knew for myself what it felt like to walk into a room and be the one with all that attention. I also knew how seductive that energy could be. It's overwhelmingly intoxicating. And to be blunt, certain work environments are conducive to a certain level of intimacy and time shared. We had already run across a few situations that made me want to come up with a proactive solution to protect the sanctity of our trust. As a child, trust had been non-existent in my home, and it was something I desperately wanted in my marriage. As long as we had each other's trust, we could work through anything. The solution then was to create an agreement to help build that trust by which we would never be in a position to lie to each other. In other words, a relationship of transparency, which is different from an open relationship. The agreement was never, you can go sleep with whomever you want, whenever you want. Instead, it was, hey, when those temptations are in play, let's trust each other to come together in partnership with the truth, talk, and work as partners through them. In this way, we eliminated any possibility of betrayal. And yes, this sounds like a recipe for abusing trust. It's not a strategy for the faint of heart. But as I learned early in my life, painful as it is confronting the truth, is so much more painful being left in the dark. Later on, talk of our open marriage was somewhat misleading because it wasn't the free-for-all it sounded like, but the term became an easy explanation for much more complicated issues going on between us in that era. I don't believe our solution is for everybody. And in hindsight, considering I was so young and didn't understand all that would come with this decision, I definitely would make some adjustments if I could go back. This was a decision that I felt I needed to make at the time in order to trust what we were building together and to protect myself from being abandoned. Of course, in the process, I abandoned myself. Another controversy that lingered was the way in which I chose to educate my kids. Homeschooling is not for everyone. I get it. It's a ton of work for the parent willing to become educated about all different approaches to learning, as well as in the different subjects covered in mainstream academic settings. It's not that I'm against public or private schools. In fact, when Will and I established a charitable family foundation, one of our priorities was funding programs for education, especially arts education, in marginalized communities in this country and around the world. The main reason I wanted to homeschool my kids was that I wanted them to be able to travel with Will and me while we worked. It was important that they be with us. With this, one of my goals was to give my kids the strongest possible fundamentals for lifelong learning, much as I'd been given by Marion. I also understood there was so much learning that could happen from being exposed to new places and from being in contact with children from communities very different from their own. It was also important that they had teachers and peers of color in a setting of inclusion, which is why, as time went on, we expanded our approach and built a full-fledged school to include other students who came from a range of backgrounds. Some of the controversy about my approach to education probably had to do with the use of the study technology learning method that I discovered when I was introduced to Scientology. Study tech, although it came from Scientology, is legally defined as secular. Because of my experiences on Sundays at the Ethical Society and my Christian, Islamic, Judaic, Buddhist, and Sufi studies throughout my adult life, I didn't hold the same stigma around the Church of Scientology that most do. I've also never been a fan of organized religion, though I appreciate spiritual study and observance of all kinds. I was very clear when I stepped into the Church of Scientology that becoming a member would not be possible, nor was it my goal. My goal was to embrace the basic study manual to educate myself about a method of learning. The main focus of this method is on helping a student achieve 100% proficiency with a subject, as opposed to memorizing and regurgitating, but not gaining any command over said knowledge or skills. Study Tech has a component for helping a child gain a sense of self-determinism with respect to whatever is being taught. The system offers many different processes for how to engage children in their education and to create habits that make them become lifelong learners. Although Jaden thrived as an independent student throughout his schooling, Willow at one time in her middle school years wanted to attend a traditional school. My one condition was that she commit to the entire year. When Christmas vacation came around, Willow decided she did not want to continue her new school. Willow, I told you that once you started, you have to finish the year. Willow huffed and puffed a bit but returned to school and finished the year. I was actually impressed by the skill sets she attained, including the new methods of organization for her studies, as well as time management. She was very proud that she had completed the year and was happy with all that she had learned. Overall, she believed attending traditional school was a worthy experience. As a mother, I found it gratifying to see my kids love to learn and develop the openness to question and in time to craft their own approach to self-education. In the process, I learned a lot, especially how to facilitate my kids' individual educational needs, and I don't regret a moment of it. Eventually, I stopped paying attention to the criticism and judgment of others about how to raise my kids. There are no cookie-cutter ways to raise children, and the only concern any of us should have is making sure we're paying attention to what our individual child needs. No parent should be judged when trying to facilitate ways for their child to thrive, because guess what? We're all guessing anyway, while doing our best. I really want to come back into your life and have a chance to be your father. It was not what I expected to hear from Rapsel when he visited in July 1999. More than 20 years had passed, but I had never forgotten that day in Baltimore when he announced that he couldn't be my father. Now, apparently, he was having a change of heart. At this point, Rob seemed to be in a good place. He had been clean for years, although his addiction was such that he could stay sober for a good while and then fall off. Nonetheless, he was healthy and handsome as ever. The two of us found ourselves in the living room, sitting on the couch together and mindlessly watching television, when he made this sudden declaration of wanting to be in my life as a father. Surprised and insulted, I blurted right out, "I'm married, building a family of my own. I don't need a father now." My inner monologue went much further. "Oh, now I'm worthy enough for you to be my father because of what I made of my life?" Sadly, I didn't have the maturity yet to grasp that it's never too late to make amends, and that people are often unskilled at doing so. It was Robsel's timing that made me question his sincerity. He went silent and returned to watching television. So did I, and that was that. About 6 years later, my brother Khalid, the son of Robsel and Carolyn, who lived in California, and whom I call Caleb, called to tell me that our father's addiction was at its worst, and if I didn't bring Rob out to LA from Baltimore, he would, without a doubt, die. Two warring positions took hold in my mind. At 7 years old, I had accepted the edict that Rob was not to be my father, and believed we had relinquished all responsibility to each other. But I couldn't leave Rob to die. Knowing there was no one else to step in, I made the decision to bring him to LA and enter him into Narconon, a program affiliated with Scientology. Narconon was designed to help people with debilitating addictions, and I could only hope that they could help my father. Robsel was in disastrous shape. Drugs had ravaged his body. He was so sick that he could not walk and was confined to a wheelchair. Weak, thin, and plagued by illness, he was clearly on the brink of death. Even though we had little contact while he was in the residential program, I learned that within less than a month, Robsel was drug-free, out playing basketball no less. His health, body, and mind was recovering speedily. It was nothing short of a miracle. By the time I saw Robsel next, he was fit, fresh with a new haircut and a spark in his eye. He was bright, strong, and mentally sober in a way I had never witnessed before. He wanted to continue his recovery in LA, and in a moment of good timing, we had space for him in a guest house on a property we had just moved from, and where my brother, Khalib, my sister-in-law, Trish, my niece, Jade, and my nephew, Jalil, were temporarily staying until they moved into their new home. This gave Rob an opportunity to spend time with his grandchildren. They got to experience the magic and beauty of Rob's mind, imagination, and talent, still as super smart and eclectic in his thinking as ever, and still an artist in his own right. Robsel Pinkett, unburdened by his addictions, was who he had always been. A man before his time who was always contemplating existential concepts in search of higher truths. We made up for lost time somewhat. The power of DNA became more evident to me, because even though we had inconsistent contact in my childhood, I was very much like him in my eclectic approach to life and my desire to search for deeper meaning. Nothing was off limits for Rob, in the same way nothing was off limits to me. We were alike in the sense that he would try pretty much anything if he felt it might encompass a higher truth. Rob was very clear that Narconon had saved his life when we all believed there was no hope, which was why he kept going further into his studies in Scientology. One day Rob came to the house and asked to talk. He brought me into the library, and we sat down at the table together. "I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me and for allowing me to continue my studies at the church, but I won't be going back." Out of curiosity, I asked, "Why?" I love Jesus, and some of their spiritual beliefs conflict with mine. His concise answer was fair. He got up to leave, then thought for a beat before turning back to me and saying, "Stay where you are. You don't need to go beyond there." I nodded, saying in so many words that I had no plans to do so. I'd been clear all along about what I wanted to study and the lane I was going to stay in. Maybe there would have been more pressure for me to become a member of Scientology had I not drawn the line several times. In any case, after Rob stopped his studies, mine came to an end soon after. Like so many addicts who struggle to stay clean in the harshness of the world, Rob would fall into his addiction again. It was heartbreaking for everyone. After he fell off the wagon, he went back into a rehab facility that I paid for, but he kept using, which ultimately made me extremely angry. I came to the decision that he should go back to Baltimore and bear the consequences of his own choices. He reached me on my cell while I was on a set somewhere to tell me how unhappy he was with my decision to get him back to Baltimore, without my assistance once he left Los Angeles. I was all the more frustrated because he felt entitled to my continuing to pay for his lifestyle as his sole financial support, even though he was still using. We had a terrible disagreement, but I held firm. There comes a moment when you have to let go and let God. The pain of confronting a parent's addiction yet again was too much. I felt that continuing to pay for care and lifestyle would only enable Rob's addiction. It's never easy for the child of an addict to understand how to create healthy boundaries, when to step up and when to step away. This confusion made me even angrier. The never-ending roller coaster was enough. In early 2010, before arrangements could be made for Rob to go to Baltimore, while he was still in rehab in LA, I got a call when I was out of town. The minute I heard my brother's voice on my phone, I knew. Rob's dead, isn't he? Yeah. Khalib went on to say that Rob had died from an overdose. Because I was out of town, my brother took on the responsibility of handling everything, identifying Rob's body and making all necessary arrangements. We all then flew to Baltimore to attend the funeral. At the burial, reality struck me hard. His addiction had killed him. In my teens, Adrian was the one we all thought wasn't going to make it. Rob would always bounce back. Stories can surprise you the way they play out. The funeral was a blur, but I have one clear memory of looking over at my grandmother Shirley. I never thought I would have to watch her bury her son. On this tragic day, she stood strong. With all her loss and pain, she never lost her faith. After Robsel's death, I began to make peace with the memory of who he had been in my life. With that came the recognition that my father never felt like this place was his home. He never felt that he belonged anywhere, and was lonely in a crowded room. Increasingly, I could relate to him in that way, and found an entry point to feeling more empathy and compassion toward him. As time has passed, I've learned that Rob deserves honor for giving me life, and that his struggles and shortcomings were not to be taken personally. He was not born simply to be my father, but to play out the role designed for him by the Great Supreme. He did the best he knew how, and deserved love, even in his struggle. He lived out the plan of his Father God. Robso had said it best. Nobody gets out of life alive. My father taught me a morbid but valuable lesson. That if I am in a disagreement with someone, I ask whether the conflict or upset would exist if that person was on their deathbed. If I can answer that it wouldn't matter in that instance, I know I should let it go. Once my father died, I began very small steps toward the acceptance that people are not born to live out the purpose I might see fit for my needs, nor I for them. At this time, Jaden and Willow were both going through major transitions. After the success of Pursuit of Happiness, it was clear that Jaden had risen to the challenge of a demanding role with an honest performance. As he gained public attention, I watched him, at 8 years old, carry himself with real charm and maturity. My ongoing lesson as a mother would be to continue to trust him and his instincts, but doing so was not without challenges. A pivotal moment took place when Jaden was training in LA for the filming of Karate Kid. Everything about this movie, including the 5-month shoot in China, was tough. Yet Jaden approached his role and his training as an ardent, devoted student. During a session at our home with his coach, I stood off to the side, staying quiet, as Master Wu asked Jaden to go into a split. Complying, Jaden hit the floor in a full split, leaving only a few inches between his body and the floor. Then I watched as Master Wu put his foot on Jaden's back and pressed him down to deepen the split until he fully hit the floor. Tears fell from Jaden's eyes from sheer pain. Although I had mad respect for Master Wu and understood that he believed he was doing what was best for Jaden, as a mother, I thought it excessive. "That's enough," I said. Ignoring me, the trainer lifted his foot from Jaden's back and said, "Do it again." Directly to Jaden, I said, "I think that's enough. You don't have to do it again, Jaden." Jaden got up off the floor and took a minute. "Are you okay? I think you've done enough for today." Jaden wiped the tears from his eyes and said, "I'm okay, Mommy." And then he turned for me to look at his trainer and said, "I'm ready. Let's do it again." Jaden left my side and went right into a split, hitting the floor fully on his own. The exchange communicated so much. With all of us, Will had always pressed the point that pushing yourself to your limits, creatively, athletically, professionally, was where you discovered your weak points, and you could then strengthen them. Jaden had begun his career so young, but in heeding his father's teaching, he wasn't going to miss this opportunity to strengthen his inner warrior. This day was a rite of passage for my son, as he was letting me know, "Mom, I got this." It was a rite of passage for me, too. Jaden gave me the signal that, in this stage of his life, he was ready for a bit more push, a bit more touching the edges, things so difficult for a mother to watch. This helps explain why in some cultures in Africa, fathers will steal their sons in the middle of the night to take them into the jungle for the ritual journeys into manhood, without warning the mother. Sometimes it's painful for a mother to witness the process of a son becoming a man. As Jaden got older, though, I found that as a black mother, having a black son in this world brought out all kinds of PTSD. I lost so many of my homies to murder, the judicial system, and other predatory factors that come with being a person of color. I was quite clear, through Pac's journey, that fame for a young black man could also make you a target to the streets and the police. All you can do is educate your kids and make sure they develop their own sense of vigilance for when and wherever danger lurks. In observing how my son moved in the world, I had to trust his instincts for staying safe. Still, I caution him every time he heads out. Be vigilant. To this day, Jaden would time and time again expand my definition of what it means to be a young, strong black male. He showed me and continues to show me the many different shades of black male strength. While in Beijing, Willow, who was 7 at the time, came to a decision about her future. In China, she had been studying music and Mandarin at the same time, both of which she loved, but she wanted to go further. What did that mean? Well, as she announced, "I want to record music." It was clear she was a natural musician. We took her desires seriously, and she proved to have the chops. So much so that by the time she was 9, she had recorded Whip My Hair in the studio at home. Will's lifelong friend Omar Rampart had found the song and when Jay-Z heard Willow's recording, he knew immediately it was a hit and signed her to Roc Nation. From then until this day, Jay has been one of the most incredible supporters of Willow's musical development, along with Roc Nation co-founders Jay Brown and Tata. It was crazy. Whip My Hair was a hit song straight out of the gate. Willow was on her way into the stratosphere, and in a rare moment of timing, Jay was able to acquire movie rights to the musical Annie, to be produced with Overbrook, the production company headed by Will and James Lasseter, with Willow set to play the title role. Everything was moving forward until we took off on a brief vacation to the Dominican Republic. There were golf carts that we used to explore the resort where we were staying, and Willow asked if she could talk to me as we set out one day, with her driving. We drove along for a while until she stopped and burst into tears, telling me, "I can't do this, Mommy. I can't do this." Emotion poured out, almost from every pore. I sat with her and simply listened. It occurred to me that she was not just saying no to the Annie movie, but to a promising pop music career. This was seemingly the dream of dreams for many young artists, and she was ready to let it go. My first thought was, so much has been set up and so many have invested in this. Fear and panic set in. For a minute, I thought that maybe I should say she would be turning down a great opportunity to have the most fantastic career and future. But I had to stop myself with some tough love. Look at her. Drop it. It's done. It's over. She doesn't want this. It's too much. You're gonna have to help her and support the dismantling of all of this and help her father understand. I recognized myself in her. We have dreams, and we are not aware of all that comes with those dreams. Willow loved the creative aspect of achieving her dreams, but not the pressure and chaotic schedules that came with it. She is strong but fragile, and that kind of pressure would not work for her mental health. I understood completely. I said to her, "It's okay. I get it." She didn't want to disappoint people. She was grateful, but she knew instinctively the way her life was going, that continuing would be to her ruin. I was looking at her in awe and thinking that, as an adult, I didn't have the gumption to say no to people close to me who thought they knew what was best for me. Here was Willow, telling the giants in her life, her dad, her mom, Jay-Z, the world, no, thank you. Damn. That conversation in the golf cart was a defining moment. She was putting herself on a journey to self-discovery as a young woman and as an artist. At freaking 11. She was doing the hard work that I hadn't even learned to do yet. My heart ached for her, but she was ready to design a life of her own making by her own hands. I was hella scared and hella proud of her at the same time. My promise was to support her in every way possible. Not only was I scared for Willow, but I couldn't bear the idea of failing her, while also trying to figure out how to do what she was doing, to build a life for myself made by my own hands instead of the hands of others. Here's the refrain. Everything grows. Little baby resentments and angers, deep sorrow unmourned, the buzzing of despair ignored. Once I got off the road with wicked wisdom and didn't have my music as a distraction or outlet, my interior world began to crumble and take me down with it. I had been a high-functioning depressive for so long, but all that so-called functioning was ending. All that had haunted me in my early 20s, everything that had led to my first breakdown, in which I believed love, marriage, children, and success would save me from, came crashing down on me with a vengeance. You can only ignore the haunting for so long. Unanswered questions demand to be answered. This time, the breakdown promised to take a greater, different toll. With the certainty that I was not allowed to fall apart because I believed it was up to me to keep everything moving in all the parts of our great big life, I shut down. In 2008, I was in Beijing, and Mia, who was there helping coordinate our living quarters during the Karate Kid shoot, picked up on this when she came to check in with me in my hotel room. We were standing by the window, one of those floor-to-ceiling picture windows that gave us a full view of the city below. Whatever gave me away, I don't know. But Mia turned to me as I continued to stare out the window, and she asked point blank, "Are you all right?" "Oh, yeah." I shrugged and blew off whatever she had sensed about me as stress from a challenging production situation. Mia and I had history, with a journey that began at Baltimore School for the Arts in North Carolina. And now I was grateful she was at my side as our estate manager, aka all things important in our lives manager. Mia had become indispensable to me. She could also read me like a book. "You know you can talk to me. I've known you a long time, and something is not right." Mia pushed, giving me a look of deep concern. "I'm good, Mia. Thank you, though," was all I said. Though Mia was my friend, she had a lot on her plate, too. I didn't want to burden her. But honestly, I was more afraid of opening the Pandora's box of my emotions. I thought I might lose what little ability to function that I had left. I was perched high atop Beijing, but felt like I was at the bottom of an abyss. If I tried, I could see how I got here, but I couldn't possibly see how to get out. Hopelessness became my unwanted companion. By the following year, those feelings intensified. I embraced a series of healing rites, any alternative modes of exercising the doom and gloom that I could find, to no avail. My thoughts were jumbled, at times fixating on the fact that I was turning 40, that my best days were behind me, and that I was past my prime, not worthy of being alive. Other times I tried to connect to what was happening in my day, but all I could think about was past losses. The gilded cage I had built felt like a prison, and I had walked in here on my own. I couldn't come up with a solution, and I couldn't remedy my shame about being unhappy. The soundtrack was a broken record. What's wrong with me? Am I inherently broken? Why can't I just be happy? More and more, I realized that Will wasn't the cause of my despair. Still, I wished he could fix me, fix it. Of course he couldn't, but that didn't keep me from being angry that he wasn't able to. Hadn't I held up my end of the deal? The boxes I had checked came to mind. I had sacrificed to be a friend, a lover, a wife, and a mother. We had a family, a successful blended family. We had amazing kids. He had his dream of being one of the most famous actors in the world. Was I demanding too much to think that now it was my turn for him to make some sacrifices for my happiness, like I had done for his? Here's the catch. I couldn't see that I had made those choices voluntarily. Nobody forced me. Up until this point, I had used resentment to give me righteous anger to get through the day. It kept me going, so I fed it. Anger was more palatable than despair, less debilitating. Many women opt to get mad rather than sad, although we're often scorned for it, especially those of us labeled angry Black women. Few who do the scorning bother to see that beneath the anger are the burdens of disappointment, debilitating hurts, and deep wells of anguish. All we know to do is use our anger to keep everything moving. For a time, I kept up a brick encasement of my rage. Nobody could touch it, not even me. As long as I could make the rage Will's fault, it was useful. That meant there could be a reason for my pain, and I wouldn't let him forget it, whether it meant giving him the silent treatment, withholding gratitude, or just loathing him. Looking back, what in the world is someone supposed to do with that? Eventually, the brick encasement of anger and blame no longer held. My capacity for discomfort kept me going. But why keep going? I've been suicidal at an earlier time in my life and had sought help. Not this time. Thoughts of ending my life became hard to control. Just getting out of bed every morning and managing to function somehow took everything out of me. The darkest, most foreboding stretches were from when I got up until about 4 in the afternoon. If I could make it until 4, I knew that I had survived another day. At the end of my 39th year, I woke up one morning with dread and realized that a vision for my future was non-existent. I literally saw nothing. Right then it hit me that I had never even imagined a life past 40, as if there was no way possible I'd ever make it that far. The fact that there was no vision for my life ahead, no sight, no dream, no desires, nothing besides a black void, terrified me. My origin story, like that of many of us young black folks from the streets, is that we live hot, fast, and reckless, putting one foot in front of the other until the inevitable day we meet our demise, earlier than expected. It tormented me that I hadn't met a demise, yet so many I loved had. Compounding that torment was this: I was alive, and not only was I alive, but living the so-called dream with a beautiful family, and I could not, for the life of me, find a way to enjoy it. That in itself brewed another cup of hot shame. I didn't imagine making it past 40, but I was doing everything I could to make it another day. That saying, check on your strong friends, is a very, very real suggestion. As my 40th birthday approached, in the midst of free-falling, I hoped that Will could see I was in no position to handle any big to-do. I was very fragile and told everyone that I didn't want a party for my birthday. I believe there is a certain degree of intense self-focus that multiplies within the cone of pain and prevents it from showing. In our disconnection from others and even ourselves, all we can focus on are the all-consuming feelings of discomfort. In another state, I might not have been upset that nobody seemed to be listening to me when I said I did not want a party. But this chapter of my life could be called me hitting rock bottom. A concerned friend who knew of the huge extravaganza being planned for my birthday called to take my temperature, knowing that I might not be up for it. I feel terrible telling you this, my friend began, swearing me to secrecy as I was told that Will, in the love language he knew how to use, was planning a most unforgettable experience for my birthday. One that anyone would undoubtedly be thrilled to receive. There was only one reality. I didn't have it in me to fake it through such an event during which I would be required to be on. That would make me feel worse, reminding me of how debilitated and lonely I was, even in a huge room full of people. All I could do was express to Will once again that I was not in a condition for a party. The issue, though, was that he had been planning for months. It was impossible to cancel the entire event. Instead, we decided to go forward with a very, very small gathering of only the closest to me in attendance. The party was to take place in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the land of enchantment, over the course of 3 days. We traveled there to enjoy a much more intimate version of what Will had envisioned. For a few moments, I got to just be, as I was, with people who I believed really loved me. At dinner the first night, we sat, all of us, at a long table. It was so nice and still. There was so much love in the room. I was given a much-needed embrace in the simplicity of it all. And even though the undercurrent of hopelessness still lurked, for the moment, it was nice to feel what I desperately needed, to simply feel loved and held. I felt it. But in my fog, I couldn't express my appreciation to Will and to everyone who had made it happen. One of my longtime and dearest friends, Ramsey Naito, my homegirl from Baltimore School for the Arts, was in attendance. We had both gone from running the streets in Baltimore and getting drunk off peach schnapps to landing in Hollywood. She had become a leading studio executive, eventually heading up the animation divisions at Paramount and Nickelodeon. The second afternoon, Ramsey came to my room to check on me. She started with small talk, but I could tell she had something on her mind. Finally, she asked, "What's going on? I feel like something's wrong." Holding back tears, all I could say was, "I don't know, Ramsey. You don't seem like yourself. I've never seen you so fragile." I paused, desperately trying to put my words together in a way that didn't make me seem too pathetic or out of control. "I'm so unhappy, and I can't figure out why or what to do." She responded, "I'm really worried about you." Ramsey sat with me in the room, giving me a safe harbor. It was just us there talking. She would later reveal that she was worried because I seemed so isolated, so alone, in a room full of people. I tried to reassure her that I'd be okay. She wasn't going to let me off the hook. "Maybe you should talk to somebody," she suggested. I nodded, letting her know in so many words that I had tried therapy, but here I was. Just having her check in on me like that was a gift. At a point when I felt no one had listened to the fact that I did not want to party, I had been expected to rise to the occasion, and I couldn't. And Ramsey could see that. She was willing to listen and not make me feel ungrateful or crazy. Ramsey wasn't the only one. Miguel caught up with me mid-walk toward the end of that second evening, asking if there was anything he could do. "You seem heavy." He was in his big brother mode, just touching base. I wanted to say, "I'm going through something, but I'll be okay." But I couldn't, because I didn't know if that was true. Over the next month, I came to the conclusion that I would never be okay. After scouting different sites for driving off the road at just the right angle to kill myself, without having it look intentional, I finally chose the spot. That was when I pulled over and looked down. Now all I had to do was decide when to carry through with the plan. A week or so later, by divine guidance, Jaden, a hint of enthusiasm in his eyes, came to grab me from the kitchen to join a conversation that led to a life-saving experience. Ojai, California, January 2012. Terrified as I am to head down the driveway to the medicine woman's house, my heart damn near beating out of my chest. My initiation into the ayahuasca ceremony on night 1 is nowhere near as intense as expected. The medicine woman has an immediate calming effect as she leads me to my seat on low meditation pillows in the middle of her space. A quaint, comfortable room with powerful tankas of Tara, a statue of Kuan Yin, a picture of Jesus, and on her wall, a bronze sculpture of an Egyptian symbol. The medicine woman appears experienced. I can tell she's not on no play, no fairy bee, moon dust, freaking crystal wands with affirmations and shit. Her calm intensity makes it clear she is serious about this work. At 8 p.m. on the nose, the ceremony begins. The medicine woman brings out a brass tray with a plastic cup and pours the brew until the cup is about a third full. Then she holds out the tray for me to take the cup. And so I drink. Oh my God. It is the nastiest taste I've ever had in my life. Even to consume the plant is a passage in itself. It's so terrible, you can rethink your entire effort. My guide takes her seat on a pillow on the floor, her legs crossed like mine. For the next hour and 15 minutes, we sit in silence. No sound other than the music she has curated, especially for this journey. After all that time, I am surprised that I feel nothing. But I'm not about to say anything. Finally, the medicine woman speaks. You need more? I think so. Clearly, I'm so defensively layered. I need much more to break through. My next gulp is bigger than the first. It's as awful as before, maybe worse. Another 45 minutes of silence follow. Not much seems to be happening. The medicine woman brings me a third serving, and I swallow it fast. A few minutes later, I am in. I am gone. I'm in another world, an altered reality. Very little time passes before I am replaced by a panther. My favorite animal has always been the black panther, and I am nothing short of thrilled. My assumption is that she came to me in this ceremony because she is my spirit animal. But I was to learn that the panther, like the rainbow serpent, frequently appears as a guide in the ayahuasca journey. I can see her and through her as she leads me into the darkness of the jungle, showing me the way. Here we go. For the rest of the night, this most majestic black panther and I moved deeper and deeper into the woods. I was not afraid. The journey began to feel like a beautiful midnight prowl into new territory. We walked through the jungle all night with an alluring, mysterious darkness. By 3 a.m., I began to emerge from this first leg of the journey. I had lived. I was grateful and drove safely back to my friend's guest house. The second night began much the same as the first night, except this time I needed only 2 doses. Once again, I became the Black Panther in the jungle, lulled into believing I was skilled at this ceremony and enjoying my prowl into the unknown. I felt almost fearless by the third night. Big mistake. The medicine woman asked, "Are you ready to drink?" With a kind of bring-it-on attitude, I took hold of the plastic cup, gulping the unpleasant brew. Then I took another dose, drinking even faster. 2 doses at once. The medicine took hold quickly, much more so than the previous nights. Between the medicine and the music, I soon became a little overwhelmed by all the thoughts and sensations whirling in my mind. Oh no. I could feel a different level of intensity taking hold of me. I was losing control. Now I'm scared. I can't get hold of myself, my feelings, my thoughts, and all kinds of pictures that are flashing in my mind's eye. My mental state is a big, murky tornado, and I've lost all my bearings. Stop! I'm screaming inside my head. I don't like this. Stop it! Now! I've plunged off a cliff into a dark pit, and voices crawl in like hissing snakes. You're worthless. Fucking kill yourself. What are you waiting for? Fucking do it now. The voices get louder and louder. I want to put my arms up to shield myself, but what good will that do? The voices sound like they're coming from outside and inside of me, all in a barrage like gunfire. You're a miserable, stupid person. You don't deserve to live. You don't do shit right anyway. Nobody will miss you, so kill yourself. Why? I'm pleading, crying, gasping. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the medicine woman as she watches me, not saying anything. On my knees and with my forehead to the ground, I'm desperately pleading with the voices, confessing my sin. I'm so sorry that I tried to look for myself in the eyes of other people. What else? Anything that I can think to be sorry for, I say, trying to find an answer so these voices will stop. As if trying to run from the gunfire, I make it to my feet and go into the small bathroom to face myself in the mirror, all while being chased by taunting voices. Jada, just do it. Just fucking kill yourself. Just fucking kill yourself. Your kids will be better off without you here. All they need is will. All everyone needs is will. I will later understand that Mother Aya is showing me my own suicidal thoughts. She is showing me all the unloved parts of myself needing light and love within me to purify these lies. In those minutes, I have no idea that these voices are my thoughts. I am convinced that evil has entered me, that I am possessed by the devil. The voice I hear next is different. It's deep, low, and matter of fact. Just kill yourself. Fleeing the bathroom back to the company of the medicine woman doesn't help. There is nothing she can do besides hold space. I'm forced to witness this dense black shadow within myself. The night turns into early morning, and I'm in that dungeon, wrestling with the devil. He won't leave, no matter how much I try to bargain. The more I fight, the more I wrestle, the more everything coming at me intensifies. My panther has vanished. I have ventured into the exiled lands, the exiled part of myself. It's now just me with me, living in a horror movie within my mind. You break the rules, and you become the hero. I do it, and I become the enemy. Wanda to Doctor Strange in Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Just as it's important to comply with the rules at times, sometimes it is important to know when to break them. When we're so trained to check boxes, we become a prisoner inside them. It's a scary moment when we have to risk the fallout, whether it comes from other people's judgment or from giving up our need to be the always available, reliable, and compliant one. Uncheck some boxes. It can be terrifying to let go of that which is familiar and to lean into that which is not. If someone doesn't love or approve of you because you've decided to venture outside the box or because playing by the rules no longer works, they are not for this part of your journey, and that's okay. There are lessons to be learned inside the box and outside it. Take the opportunity to diversify your experiences. You may fall on your face, but if you so choose, you will not leave the experience without the gift of knowing your own courage. You may not find your treasure, but you will be taking one big leap in the direction of it. Even having the courage to uncheck the old box will empower you in ways you can't know until you do it. Go on. Choose to simply live by your own rules. What boxes are you ready to uncheck, and why? When you clarify this answer, you'll be ready. Then, do it.